Hello, scholars, and welcome to session 14 of our writing. Today we're going to look at drafting again. So remember, a few days ago in writing, so maybe last week, we started a new piece of writing, and we decided that we're going to be our own job captain. So now you know all that there is to know about writing a really good narrative story. And so now you're going to choose a different story to write and write it. So today we're drafting. Let's go over what we've learned about the writing process. How do you rehearse a story? Remember, when you're rehearsing a story, you tell it out loud. So you tell a parent or an adult or a sibling or even yourself. You say it out loud. You practice telling it. The next thing that we do is draft the story. So once you've practiced the story a few times, telling it out loud, you can write it fast and furious down in your writer's notebook. How do you revise a story? So since we wrote fast and furious, we weren't thinking about spelling or grammar really. We were just getting all of our ideas out on the paper. So to revise it is to make it better, to improve it. So when we read through our flash draft, we can go through, maybe change the spelling, maybe add lots of adjectives, maybe add transition words like first, later, a little after, things like that. Remember, we always want to make an exciting lead that will really grab our readers. So we can start with someone talking, so with dialogue, or with action. And then editing has mostly to do with grammar, punctuation, so looking at where your paragraphs are going, looking at if you have the proper quotation marks and commas, that you're paragraphing correctly, that you're writing sentences correctly, that you're using capital letters appropriately, things like that. Today, we're going to focus on reliving an event and capturing that event in our writing. So scholars, although you've already started your second story that you're really going to try to get into a final draft, today we're just going to focus on something that happened to us yesterday. So we're going to do that a little bit later. But first, think, do you have any memories that you will never forget? Our author and the creator of this wonderful curriculum that we use wrote all about one memory she had when she was a student. She is really working on showing her audience what's happening in the story and not just telling her audience what is happening in the story. So here we go. Let me show you how I go about doing this kind of writing, and then we'll try it together. I'm going to choose a story that I've already told you. The time I skipped recess to go to Gates Deli to buy candy for the other kids, and my mom caught me. So I'm going to make a movie of that in my mind. But this time, instead of just watching the movie in my mind, I'm going to actually put myself inside the movie. I'm going to close my eyes and relive what happened. You watch me, because soon you will try this. We already worked on the start, remember? I reread the beginning of the story, which ended. So this is her lead. I raced to the edge of the playground. Then I looked over my shoulder to be sure that the recess teacher wasn't watching, and zoomed out of school and down the block to Gates Deli. I pushed open the door, and the lady at the checkout counter smiled and asked, "Can I help you?" I said, "I know where to find things." So that was their lead. And then the author says, pause. Let me relive what happens next in my mind. I want to see what I saw and hear what I heard. If I can't remember something, I'll picture how it might have gone and write that. I'm going to try to stay specific, showing, not telling. So scholars, remember, I've conferenced with a lot of you, and a lot of times we say, oh, we can't remember exactly what we said, or we don't remember what he or she said. You make it up to be specific, to really show your audience what's happening. So let's keep reading her story. I grabbed Mars bars, licorice, dots, cradling them in my arms. I added a few Nestle Crunch bars. Then I hurried to the checkout counter. And the author admits she doesn't actually remember what she got that day. She's just making it up. I spilled my goods onto the counter. Just then, the door squeaked open. I glanced up. What? My mom? I froze. Writers, do you see the way that she's reliving what happened and seeing and hearing everything as if she was there? Let's keep going. I froze. I was worried she'd be mad at me. Oh no, writers. The last part, I was very worried she'd be mad at me. That's not writing from inside the memory. That's writing as if I were there. That's just telling about it. I'll cross that last part out and try again. Okay, so now let me relive that memory again and try to see and hear what actually happened. I froze. Oh no, I thought. Oh no! Blood rushed to my face. I stepped back from the candy, wanting to pretend it wasn't mine. Scholars, do you see how that's stronger now? So it went from I froze, I was worried she'd be mad at me. That's not being very descriptive, is it? So here's her revision. She said, I froze. Oh no, I thought. Oh no. Blood rushed to my face. I stepped back from the candy, wanting to pretend it wasn't mine. Wow. Okay, so today we're just going to practice reliving our memories. So think about something interesting that happened to you yesterday. If you say, Mrs. Halverson, nothing interesting happened to me yesterday. Well, then think of something that happened over the weekend. Okay? It doesn't really matter what the memory is, just as long as we're practicing this approach. All right, once you choose your memory, put yourself into the memory. Where were you? What did you do? Who was with you? What happened? Now write about that event for several minutes. This writing will not be a draft. It's only a quick practice. We're not going to share each other's work except with me. So make sure that you just write a quick 5-minute little story. We're not even going to make it into a draft. Just practice putting yourself in the moment. Telling your audience how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're smelling, what you're seeing, etc. All right, what can you learn from this exercise? Remember that you are the captain of your own writing. Use what you learned today about imagining your event from yesterday and writing about it. And then once you have spent about 5 minutes on that just short little story about what happened to you yesterday, you can go back into the draft that you've been working on since last week. Okay. Be prepared that if we have a writing conference in the next few weeks, that I'm going to ask you, what are you working on as a writer? I want you to be prepared to share with your teacher what you've been working on as a writer. And then let's look back at our narrative writing checklist. So after you write your short little blurb about what happened to you yesterday, and then you go back into your story that you started last week, let's make sure that we're looking and thinking about this. I told the story bit by bit. I wrote a beginning in which I helped readers know who the characters were and what the setting was in my story. I told my story in order using phrases such as a little later and after that. I chose the action, talk, or feeling that would make a good ending and worked to write it well. I used paragraphs and skipped lines to separate what happened first from what happened later and finally in my story. I worked to show what happened to and in my characters. That means you're showing what happened to your characters, and you're also telling us what your characters are thinking. I not only told my story, but also wrote in ways that got readers to picture what was happening and brought my story to life. I used what I knew about spelling patterns to help me spell and edit before I wrote my final draft. I had help from others to check my spelling and punctuation before I wrote my final draft. I punctuated dialogue correctly with commas and quotation marks. While writing, I use punctuation at the end of every sentence. I wrote in ways that help readers read with expression, reading some parts quickly, some parts slowly, some parts in one sort of voice and others in another. All right, scholars. So, happy writing. And I hope to see your stories very, very soon.